Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing the second part of my home buying series, which is called The Process, and this will also have a two-part series to it as well. So I have my little cheat sheet here so I don't get too far ahead of myself and what I want to talk about. And I did go ahead and take off my glasses because once again you can see the glare. So we're going to get into the process. A lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about in part one is also going to flow over into part two, because a lot of these things have a part one of it and then a part two of it. So we're going to start off with the fact that we've made a decision, we want to buy a house. I've made a decision and I wanted to buy a house. And the second thing is, just depending on how anal or far ahead you are in a situation, you might already start looking at these things during the decision and maybe not in the process, but normally you would kind of maybe look at this during the process, because you first have to make a decision that you want to buy a house, right? So the first thing that you're wanting to do is you're thinking about your credit, right? Your credit is the most important thing with buying a car, getting a house, getting an apartment, pretty much doing anything that you want in the real world as an adult, right? So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to check your credit. And one of the first things to understanding your credit is knowing what credit scores are being pulled whenever lenders are looking to allow you to start the mortgage process or give you a mortgage. Now, I know a lot of us, including myself, I have a whole array of different places that I can get my credit score from. I have NerdWallet. I have all of my credit cards that give me one of my credit scores. I have Credit Karma, and I also have Credit Sesame, and my biggest one and my most recent one is my FICO Scores. So to understand what they're looking at, you have to understand what credit scores they're pulling. And for mortgage lenders, they're actually pulling your credit or your FICO 2, 4, and 5, which is not any of those credit scores that you get on a regular basis. These are older models that these mortgage lenders trust a lot more than the current models that we have. And so that is the reason why a lot of the times when you think your credit score is good and then they run your credit score and they're like, oh no, your credit score is a 540 or a 515 or a 600, and you're like, what? And that is the reason. It's because they're pulling older scores that you're not getting a regular update on, and so you're not able to always see it. And so because of that, you have to know where you can actually go and find those scores. From what I have been told while I've been in the process is myficoscores.com. I was also doing research before I was told this as to where I could go and find these scores without 600 different lenders running my credit score and dinging my credit every time that they ran my credit and giving me a hard inquiry. And so both of those information aligned, and so I do pay currently right now for my FICO score so that I'm able to see what my credit scores are for my mortgage, if I wanted to buy a vehicle, what banks are looking at if they are wanting to lend me a credit card, and then you get to just kind of see your overall FICO 8 scores as well too. So it's important that you know what scores your lenders are pulling whenever they are pulling your credit, because you need to know what you need to do to be able to get those credit scores to where you want them to be. So with that being said, you have to kind of know what minimum credit score is required in order to get a mortgage. But with that being said, you also have to know what types of mortgage loan options there are. So there are 4 mortgage loan options that I know about. If you know of any more, please comment and tell me down below, because I would love to know. And that is FHA, conventional, USDA, and VA loans. So with FHA, this is normally you can start getting a loan at a 580 credit score, but you're required to put 10% down. Anything over 620, you can put 3.5% down. Conventional loans, you normally need at least a 640 or higher. And I want to say they just changed the rules. Before it used to be 20% down, but now you can actually put 10% down, but I forget the credit score that you need to be able to do that. I don't know much about VA loans because I'm not in the military and neither is my partner. So I don't really know what their like credit scores are, but I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, that you do have to have a 640 or 620 credit score, and then in some cases they'll help you with like your down payment assistance, but I'm not exactly sure. And then USDA loans, you are required to have a 640 credit score or higher, and there is no down payment that is required from you. So everything is rolled over into your loan and you're just required to pay like the closing cost. So you just kind of know, you just need to know which loan you're wanting to go into, which kind of fits your needs, and you'll also make sure that you talk to a lender because they can better help you understand which loan you would qualify for or what your different options are. Originally, when we were looking to buy a house, we wanted to do a USDA loan so that we did not have to pay a down payment. However, with a USDA loan, you're required to live like outside of the city limits. And that was fine and everything like that, but it was too far out for us in a drive to like work. It was driving like an extra 20-25 minutes after we got into like where we lived to then kind of get home. And that was just a little too much. So we kind of gave up our idea of doing a USDA loan and just thought that maybe we'll just go ahead and do an FHA loan and see where it takes us. And we did end up doing an FHA loan and putting down 3.5%. Now, another thing, you guys, when we're talking about loans and lenders and knowing your credit, through experience, please talk to more than one lender, okay? I would say the magic three, and then kind of go with whichever one kind of makes you feel more comfortable and more helpful, because they're going to be part of the process all the way through until you close on your loan. And you want to be able to have a lender who's responsive, who can explain things to you and make you feel comfortable and make the process as easy and simple as possible. Because if not, you're going to hate buying a house. You're just going to hate the whole process, and you might just want to give up because as many lenders as I have spoken to, some of the times I just felt like there's just no possible way, because that means I'm just never gonna get a house. And I say that to say, because with the lenders that I've spoken to, some of them recommended me, going back to talking about credit, telling me to get credit repair and paying for credit repair. I personally, this is just my opinion, do not recommend credit repair, because everything that you're paying for, you can literally do on your own. I had 3 charge-off cards that I needed to not necessarily get removed from my credit, but if I could, I naturally would want to do that. And instead of paying somebody to try and take it off and, you know, negotiate price and stuff like that, it's very easy for you to do yourself. Just call them while it's in collections, tell them that this is how much money you can pay, and they will or will not agree and tell you what their price is. Go ahead and pay it off. Get the receipt and mail them to all of the credit bureaus and ask them to take it off. And it's easy as 1, 2, or 3. If there are things on your credit that's over 7 years old, then get those account numbers and mail the credit bureaus and let them know, hey, these things are over 7 years old. They don't need to be on my credit. Please remove. Again, easy as 1, 2, 3. There's no reason to pay all of this money that you could be using towards savings or even paying off debt that we all know may or may not be true, to somebody else to do something that you can easily do. And once again, that is just my opinion on how I feel about credit repair. I paid money, although I knew not to do it, to have credit repair work on my credit, and they did absolutely nothing but take my money. And when I finally took it into my own hands and just listened to my mortgage lender who I had now, it was easy as Janelle, pay this debt and send this paperwork. And literally my score went up almost like 180 points. So if you're trying to look for a quick turnaround, not everybody's credit is the same, but for me in that instance, that's all it took to get my credit score up. And that's what we ended up doing, was me really just paying off some charge off cards that I had. And that is why it's so important to talk to a mortgage lender. Most mortgage lenders will have like a credit repair person that they have. Some will charge, some won't. My mortgage lender, they did have like a credit repair person that we did talk with and go through like their credit like repair system, but it wasn't really like most people. They actually just went through our credit scores with us and told us what we needed to do in order to qualify for a mortgage. And they gave us a timeline to complete that. And as long as we completed what they told us to do, then we should be fine. And the score that he gave us as to what our scores would be once we completed all of those things were just 2 points off. So it was very close, and a very good estimate as what our credit scores would look like once we did what we were supposed to do. It only took me a month because I literally just paid off everything. And so we were able to see a quick turnaround in that process. So those are things to think about, is where your credit score is and giving yourself a timeline, right? Because your timeline might not be the same as mine. Your timeline might be that you have to wait 5 months in order to get all of the things that you need off your credit. Or you might have to wait a whole year. There's sometimes things like you're wanting to make sure that you haven't been late on like your car payments or your credit cards or anything that's on your credit in the last 2 years, because most mortgage lenders will look back as far as 2 years to get a full understanding of who you are as a buyer and how you take care of your credit and things like that. So you also have to give yourself a timeline in what you're looking for when you're talking about wanting to get a house. Your timeline might be that you want to buy a house in 2 months, but your credit timeline might say that you need to wait another year or so. So you have to be practical and you have to know where you stand before you get even further into the housing process. The decision has already been done and we're still motivated that we want to buy a house, but now what's the next step that you need to take in order to achieve that goal of getting a home? So I think that it is very important that you kind of know where your credit score is, what kind of credit score you need. You don't want to do the bare minimum, but if you have the bare minimum and it's really just very important that you get into a house because of, for whatever reason, then so be it. That is your life and what you need to do. But you always want your credit score to be, of course, a lot better, because you get better interest rates and different opportunities and options for different things. But that is something that you want to think about. And depending on where you live, different options for loan programs will be available for you or not available for you. So a VA loan doesn't work for you if you're not in the military or if you're not like directly like related to somebody like in the military, if I'm not mistaken. But that wouldn't have been an option for me, so I would not think of myself as wanting to go for a VA loan because I'm not going to qualify for a VA loan. So you can do your research on the different types of loans out there and see which one works for you. And with that being said, we did an FHA loan and we needed to save 3.5%. Fun story, when we went to go look at this house, we weren't actually planning on doing anything. My partner fell in love with the house and we got into contract that same day. They told us that our house would be ready at the end of November, and that literally gave us about 4 months to come up with about $9,200 in a down payment. So I wouldn't say that it's very practical for many people to come up with that kind of money in 4 months, but we were very determined to, and we have come up with that money and then some. And so once again, that falls into your timeline, right? If that wasn't something that we would be able to do, then we wouldn't have gone to contract with maybe that particular home. We probably would have waited. We would have still gone through with the application and stuff, but maybe not into anything too quickly if we didn't think that we would be able to save up that much money in time. The good thing about our situation is at the time that we were getting into contract with that house, we also got a great deal in terms of not having to pay any closing costs or anything of that sort. So we were very lucky in that perspective, because that is also something that you'll need to think about, as well as you're not just saving for a down payment, but you're also saving for your closing costs, which is about 1 to 3 or 1 to 5, just depending on where you live in the country, percent of whatever your loan amount is. So that is also something that you want to think about, which also goes back to the decision as well too, you guys, because if you're buying a newly built home or like new construction, normally the builders will, give you huge credits and stuff like that if you use their lender. You don't necessarily need to force yourself to use their lender, but that is something that you do want to think about. And lastly, the most important thing I think for this part of the process is savings. You don't only just want to save for your down payment and your closing costs, but you also want to save for your home. So originally that was our plan. I wanted to be able to save for our down payment and closing costs, and then I also wanted to save for our home so that we could be able to move into our home comfortably, maybe have a month's worth of a mortgage payment already saved up, and then have savings or money to be able to buy and put things into our house. I did not want us to move into our house and be house poor. And with that thought in my head, this is why I've been freaking out for the last 4 months, because I'm just trying to figure out how this all was going to work out. However, it is working out in a very different way for us, but it is working out and we have a plan, and you guys will get to see that further along. But that is also something that you want to think about, right? You want to move into your house, and you want to move into your house comfortably. Depending on what kind of house you're moving into, you also want to make sure you have like a backup savings plan or emergency fund, that if something was to happen with your house a couple of months or a year after moving in, you already have that money. As we've been going through the housing process and things like that, I've learned that we don't think too far into owning a home as some people may make it look. I love watching house videos or home tours or furnishing your house, and it's all nice and pretty cosmetically, but we don't always think about all the different things that you have to pay for to upkeep your house, or things that you need to save for. Me and my partner were just talking the other day, and he's bringing up all these different things that he's like, hey, we need to put this out into savings because this is something that could potentially come up later on. And I'm like, good grief. So much things to save for, so much things that you have to keep up with. We have like a furnace and like this humidifier or something like that that goes with our AC that keeps our air clean, and you have to change it and keep it clean every 6 months. And I'm like, oh gosh, Janelle, this is going to drive you crazy, because now you're going to be so anal about everything in this house. So that is also something that you want to think about too, right? It's all fun and dandy when you want to buy a house and you want to have a house to kind of be like everyone else, or you want to live the American dream. But then you get into the house and realize that it is a lot of responsibility, and you have to make the decision that if I buy a house, I need to be more responsible. It is not just this fun, toy that I get to have, and, we have all these nice things in there, but you also have to upkeep it and keep it looking nice and keep it looking good, or it will fall apart right in front of your face, and it's not a cheap fix. And so that is definitely something that you want to think about while you're in the process as well too, because sometimes you get very caught up in the decision and just thinking about all the beautiful things and nice things you would want in a home and where you would want your home to be. But then it becomes a little bit more real once you get into the process and you start breaking down numbers and thinking about what you can afford and what you can't afford. And I'm not going to go too far into that because that's going to be the second part of the process. But those are the few things that you need to think about in the process, right? What is your time frame? What does your credit look like? Does your credit allow you to move into something quickly, or is it going to take some time? Do you have savings? Are you budgeting appropriately for this new home? Do you know who your lender is? Do you know what kind of loan that you're wanting to get into? Those are some very important things that you want to keep in your mind as you're going through the process. And in part 2, I am going to talk a little bit more about budgeting, how much house you can afford, and what happens after your credit and everything like that is good to go and you're ready to purchase a home. So you guys should definitely stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. Comment down below if you guys like this video and give it a thumbs up. I would very much so appreciate it. And if you guys have anything that you'd like to add to this little talk, go ahead and put it in the comments below, and I'll see you guys for part 2.